Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. It has been a while yet again. I'm really sorry that my videos have been so spaced out. It's just been really busy with client work lately. I've been really busy with client work lately, which is great, but yeah, it's just has been meaning fewer videos. So thank you so much to everybody who has continued with me and kept on subscribing, even though I haven't been as regular lately. I also wanted to say thank you for all of the just really sweet and genuinely thoughtful comments that you all have been leaving on my videos recently. I am going to answer some questions in today's video, as you will have guessed by the title. So I was looking back through comments and tons of comments that I haven't had a chance to answer yet, which I feel so bad about because so many of them are just like heart-meltingly sweet. So yeah, I just want you all to know that I read all of your comments and I appreciate all of them and the time that you take to write them. And I am going to work on replying to them as soon as I can. But in the meantime, as you will see, I am working on a painting of a pastry. And this is a pan au raisin. So it's like a kind of a rolled pastry, like a cinnamon roll made out of croissant dough, but there's almond paste and raisins in the folds. So I am working on it because I've been developing my second Skillshare class, which I just published today, Wednesday, August 15th. I'm going to put the preview, I'll upload the preview and a link to the class and all of that onto YouTube as well. But anyway, that is why I am painting this thing. And the class is like it's very much like a description of each step as I'm doing it. So it's different than what I've done before, definitely different than my other Skillshare class, and more in depth than I've gone into on YouTube before just because of time constraints. So yeah, basically it's me explaining everything as I'm actually doing it. So it's much more like direct demonstration than I've done before. So yeah, and you all, I don't think here on YouTube, but on Twitter and Instagram, I posted polls asking what you wanted to see me do for this kind of a class, and pastry and bread was by far the most common request, so that is what I have done. Anyway, I have, I think, 9 questions here that I'm going to answer, and I just have pulled some screenshots, so I will try to put these on the screen as well, I think, if I can find a way to do it that's not obtrusive. So anyway, I'm just going to go through, and the first question is from Orchid Box, and they ask, do you think joining an agency would help with how much legwork you have to do on your own? Oh my goodness, Orchid Box, you have no idea how much I think about this and fantasize about this. I honestly don't know. I mean, at this point, I have had different agencies reach out to me, and I've applied to a couple that I would be really interested in working with. The ones that have reached out to me, I wasn't particularly interested in being on their roster because they had maybe not a great reputation, or they had a ton of artists that they represented. And then the ones that I really would be interested in working with have like very small rosters and are super, super competitive. So honestly, I feel like I'm doing okay on my own right now, in terms of like being able to manage the workload. And because I feel like I'm juggling it, like I'm not that motivated to just jump on with any agency. There are definitely some costs to it. Just at a baseline level, like they take a cut of how much you make. And I think I'm having to kind of weigh like whether that's worth it, considering yeah, just like the volume of my work overall. The biggest thing I would be interested in would definitely be having help with like negotiating and doing contracts and all of that stuff, because that is just like such a time suck and I don't enjoy it. But basically, I'm not willing to sign on with an agency until I find one that feels like a really good fit for me. But this is something I'm thinking about, and if the right one comes along, I would be interested and would definitely love to help cut down on some of the legwork. So next question. This is from Mei Yin Gyang. And they ask, have I heard about the Epson Perfection V600? I'm not sure if it's an upgraded version of the V370. I'm researching for a scanner, but didn't know if I should get the 600 or the 370. So this is something that's on my list as well. I've had the 370 for a couple of years now, and they have come out, Epson has come out with some newer versions, but every time I looked into it, like the actual like guts of the scanner and what it could actually do wasn't really any different from the 370. So I didn't bother upgrading. I haven't had a chance to specifically research the V600 yet, but that is on my list of things to do. That and printer, I'm like looking at upgrading both of those in the next year or so. I don't upgrade just because a new version comes out. Whenever something comes out, I always look at like the technical specifications of what it can do. So like how fast it can scan, how high res it can scan for a scanner, for example, and then for a printer, it would be other stuff. But like, yeah, I actually look at whether the not just whether the body has changed, but like what's inside and the capacity for what it can do. So I can't speak specifically to this, but if you're curious, the same thing, you can do the same thing to evaluate that I will do, and that's just to look at the description of what the V370 can do, and then compare it to the description of the V600, and get very technical, like in terms of the pixels and the processing speed and all of that. And oh shoot, I was going to say one. Oh, and then the other point would just be like there potentially the V370, or even like one of the earlier ones somewhere in between V370 and V600 could potentially be a little bit cheaper than the V600 and still have all of the same technical capacity. So, yes, that is what I think about that. Next question. This is from Chinique or Chinique 430, and they ask, do artists typically get royalties on commercial items with their illustrations on them? And this was asked after one of the videos that I posted about the Green Valley project with my illustrations on food packaging. And the answer is that it really depends on the type of project. So some projects, like greeting cards, for example, or books, are much more common to have royalties. For food packaging or advertising, or for magazines, any of those, it's usually just a flat fee. So that's negotiated like at the time, like before you do the project. So you know exactly how much you're going to be paid, which is great. With royalties, it sounds great, but unless you have something that's like selling at a really massive scale, it can be tough to make any sort of a decent profit with royalties. So even if I have something like the projects I've done that did include royalties as a part of the compensation, I still made sure to have a flat fee that would cover just like my baseline for what it would take to make the work. And then if that way, like if I'm not getting any royalties, it's not as if I've worked for free. I've still been paid, but royalties are just kind of like a bonus. So yeah, it just depends on the project. Next question. This is from Amanda. Do you have any good illustration books you would recommend to learn branding and food illustrations? So personally, I learn much better from demonstration and from, like watching someone else do it and then being able to try it myself. So over books, I would just recommend videos. Like there's tons of free stuff on YouTube and on my channel as well, of course. And then there's other platforms like Skillshare, and Udemy, I know has, or Udemy, however you say that. I know they have some drawing classes as well. I don't know of any specific books to learn food illustration. The one thing I would say, just since you mentioned that you're interested in learning branding, I don't know, maybe that means you're interested in the industry itself. And if you're at all considering doing professional illustration or wanting to get into that, and particularly wanting to get into more commercial stuff like food illustration and packaging illustration, I would recommend the thing that I recommend all the time, and that is the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook of Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. just can't say enough good things about that book. It's like $30. I would choose it hands down over any other art book I have. It's the most valuable, the most valuable resource, I think, for me as a professional illustrator. So that would be my recommendation if you're interested, like, in learning the industry. And then in terms of learning how to actually draw, I would just recommend videos. All right, next question. This is from Audrey. Does your customer ask for transparent PNG files? And this, I think, was also posted on one of the Green Valley videos. So PNG is a great file format for online, like if you're wanting to make an icon or like do a traditional illustration, then turn it into an icon. But really, besides that, the limitation there, the uses are pretty limited just to online. So every client that I have either wants, well, that's going to print something, either wants a JPEG, a high-res JPEG, or a TIFF, which also has a transparent background. So really your two choices mainly are a PNG or a TIFF for a transparent background. So if the file is going to be printed, my clients always want a TIFF. Yeah, so that is that. This is from Angela. Do you have a large format scanner, or did you have them scanned somewhere else? And this was also about the Green Valley Organics illustrations because they were done on a really large scale. So my scanner, what size is my scanner? I think it's big, but it's not huge. It's like, I don't know, I think it's like I think it might just be an 8.5 by 11 that it fits, or a little bit bigger than that. But what I did with the Green Valley illustrations was I batch scanned them. So I scanned one corner at a time, basically, and then I wove them all together in Photoshop. That each one took 4 scans. And that's the most that I'll do at home with my scanner. If I'm doing something that's larger than that would need that would take more than 4 pieces to scan in, it just becomes really cumbersome and difficult to try to do that from home. So in that case, I would just take it into my local print shop. They have a large format high-res scanner that they can run it through. I think it's like $3 a square foot or something like that. So it's really not that expensive, and for the amount of time and hassle and frustration that it takes. Even if I were to be able to go back in time and redo the Green Valley Organic project, or the scanning part of it anyway, I honestly think I might take that option, like the option of going into the printer, just because even though they were only 4 scans each, that was 4 times 11 illustrations, I think. And each scan, when you're scanning in at really high res, I had to scan those in at 1200 DPI because they wanted to reproduce them at a larger scale. And that is super big. So each scan, I think, took like 5 minutes. So that's like 20 minutes per illustration times 11 illustrations. So yeah, that was a lot of time. And if I were to do that over again, I totally would just like take them all to the printer and pay them to do it. Because then it's not only the time that you have to spend scanning in, it's the time that you have to spend like weaving it all together in Photoshop, which is tedious at best and can be like absolutely exasperating if for some reason things aren't lining up correctly. So yeah, I definitely recommend just taking it into a shop if you need to. All right, next question. All right, this one is from Kitsun Kun. When doing multiples of the same pieces, do you freehand sketch or print out line work duplicates to go from? So this was also a question on a Green Valley video. I think this is probably related to the cottage cheese situation, how I had to do multiples of the cottage cheese on a spoon illustration. And in that instance, I did actually just print out I printed out my sketch. I had already done my sketch, and then I was able to just print it out onto several pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper, and then tape them together and put them underneath my art paper and use my light tablet to trace them. So that if I had to freehand them each time, that would really be impractical, not only because of the time it would take, but because at a baseline level, the client had already approved the sketch. So if I were to completely do it from scratch, even if I were like really, really careful, there still would be some minor differences because that's just what happens when you draw something by hand. So since the sketch itself was already approved, I had to stick with that. So yeah, that's what I do, and it works really well. All right, next question is from Carrie Chan, and they ask, did the client provide you with reference photos? And this was also in relation to the Green Valley Organics project. No, the client did not provide the reference photos. They provided style photos. So basically, they sent some photos that they kind of liked the overall look of, and they would say specifically, like, we want it to look shiny like it does in this photo, but have details like it does in that photo. They did that with some of the subjects, but not with all of them. For the most part, I sourced all of the reference images. And for a project like this, a challenge, for example, like I did some peach illustrations for them. And they wanted, the leaves to be falling in a very particular way and the peaches to be from a very certain angle. So really the only way for me to do that was to use several different reference photos, which is not my favorite, but this client wanted the illustrations to be realistic, but they didn't want them to be like absolutely photorealistic. So since they were okay with a little bit more stylization, it made it possible for me to use multiple different references. So I just found a bunch of stuff on free for use sites like Pixabay and Morguefile. I took some of my own as well. And then I didn't really bother. I never really bother Frankensteining them. I just kind of look at several different references while I'm drawing and figure it out that way. I feel like that makes it look more natural to me. It definitely would have been nice if they had sent me the reference photos, but in this case, I was able to make it work just by using multiple different references. All right, last question. And some other folks asked this as well. This was actually part of another previous question, but I'm going to read this one here. And this is from Lee to Y. I'm wondering how you send in the stuff that needs to get feedback before the final is sent. What resolution do you scan? And do you remove the background, or do you just make some small edits? So if I'm sending in a draft, whether it's like a midpoint draft or the actual final, but it still needs to get approval, I will just scan it in a lower resolution, like 150, and I don't bother taking time to remove out the background. At that point, it's really not needed. So all I'll do is scan it in, and if it has to be done in batches, I will scan it and weave it together and then send it in. I have occasionally done photos, but sometimes I feel like that can lead to some challenges with color, since sometimes color looks different in photos or looks inconsistent. So I could send a photo for a rough draft, and then once they saw the scan of the final, they'd be like, oh, whoa, that color is like way more intense or less intense or warmer, cooler, whatever. So I do try to always do scans just so it's at least consistent throughout. So that is it. And like I said, thank you so much to everybody who has been sticking with me and who's left nice comments and all the interesting, thoughtful questions. So I'm hoping to be able to do some vlogging next week. So hopefully we'll have another video in just a week from today. And in the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe and turn the notifications on and all that good stuff. And I hope everybody has a fantastic week. Bye.